Hi everyone, this is Merline Jessy from Department of Statistics, SDNB Vaishnav College for Women. Today I am going to discuss about sampling methods. Introduction. In research, sampling refers to the selection of a smaller group of participants from the population of interest. While it would be ideal for the entire population you are researching to take part in your study, logistically this may not be feasible. When you conduct research about a group of people, it's rarely possible to collect data from every person in that group. Instead, you select a sample. The sample is the group of individuals who will actually participate in the research. To draw a valid conclusion from your result, you have to carefully decide how you will select a sample that is representative of a group as a whole. This is called sampling methods. Technical terminology. While dealing with sampling, we need to know few definitions. First, population. A population is a collection of elements about which we wish to make an inferences. In statistics, population is the entire set of items from which you draw data for a statistical study. It can be a group of individuals, a set of items, etc. It makes up the data pool for a study. For example, if the research is about drug addiction in Chennai, then the population is the drug users in Chennai. Next, an element. An element is an object on which a measurement is taken. A sampling element is the unit of analysis or case in a population that is being measured. For example, in a sample of 1000 students, each of these students is an element cases. Sampling units. Sampling units are non-overlapping collections of elements from the population that cover the entire population. Sampling unit is the individual element or group of element that is included in the sample. It is the basic unit for sampling and it can be a person or a household or a business. Technical terms. Sampling frame. A sampling frame is a list of sampling units. A sampling frame is a list of all the elements in a population from which a sample will be drawn. This list serves as a reference for selecting the sample. Sample. A sample is a collection of sampling units drawn from a sampling frame. Sample is a part of the population, also manageable representation of the larger group. Whenever it is impossible to collect data from each and every unit in the population, we can go for a sample. Based on the sample, we can infer about the whole population. Next, parameter and statistics, very important definitions in sampling. Population and statistics are two important concepts in statistics that are used to describe a population or a sample. Any statistical measure calculated from population is the parameter. A population parameter is a numerical value that describes a characteristic of a population, such as the mean or standard deviation, etc. It is usually unknown and is estimated from sample data. For example, the mean height of students in a population, that is from school, is a population parameter. Statistic. Numerical characteristic of a sample. Any statistical measure calculated from sample is a statistic. Statistic is a numerical value that describes a characteristic of a sample, such as the sample mean or sample standard deviation. It is calculated from sample data and used to make inferences about the population. For example, the mean height of a group or randomly selected student in sample is a sample statistic. Sampling theory. Sampling theory is an important field of study in statistics because two important concepts, inference and estimations, are used. What is statistical inference? The process of using a sample to make inferences about a population is called statistical inference. How are the concepts of sampling and estimation related? A subset of a population called a sample is used to provide the data. Data from the sample that is the statistics, are then used to develop estimates of the characteristics of the larger population. Hence, sampling theory consists of estimation methods and inferences. So come to the slide. Sampling theory provides the tool and techniques for data collection, keeping in mind the objectives to be fulfilled and the nature of the population. There are two ways of obtaining information: sample surveys, and the next one is complete enumeration or census. Census sample or complete enumeration. Census is the process of collecting data from every member of the population. So if the population size is small, we can prefer census. So the result will be more accurate, but taking an accurate census is more difficult than you might think. If the population size is larger, we can go for sample survey. A census study occurs if the entire population is very small or it is reasonable to include the entire population. In census, all the elements of the populations are surveyed, so no issue about the representation. On the other hand, in sample survey, only the part of the population is studied, so the information gathered should be more representative. There are two possible ways to ensure the selected sample is representative, or probability sampling and non-probability sampling methods. Also, it is called a census sample because data is gathered on every member of the population. Why sample? In some situation, it is not possible to get information from each and every one under study. The population of interest is usually too large to attempt to survey all of its member. A carefully chosen sample can be used to represent population. There are two possible ways to ensure the selected sample is representative, as I have mentioned earlier: probability and non-probability sampling. Sampling methods, probability and non-probability sampling methods. Probability sampling. Each member of the population has a known non-zero probability of being selected. This type of sampling is based on the principles of random selection, and it involves selecting samples in a way that every member of the population has an equal chance of being included in the sample. Probability sampling is commonly used in scientific research and statistical analysis, as it provides a representative sample that can be generalized to the larger population. Probability sampling methods are further classified into different types. The methods includes random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling, and cluster sampling. Next, non-probability sampling. Non-probability sampling, members are selected from the population in some non-random manner. This type of sampling does not rely on random selection, and it involves selecting samples in a way that does not give every member of the population an equal chance of being included in the population. Non-probability sampling is often used in qualitative research, where the aim is not to generalize finding to a larger population, but to gain an in-depth understanding of a particular group. Non-probability sampling methods can be quicker and most cost-effective than probability sampling methods, but they may also be subject to bias and may not be representative of the larger population. The methods includes convenience sampling, judgment sampling, quota sampling, and snowball sampling. Let us discuss the different types of probability sampling methods along with illustrative examples here in detail. Probability sampling, so now we are going to discuss about simple random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified random sampling, and cluster sampling with some examples. Random sampling. Random sampling is the purest form of probability sampling. Each member of the population has an equal and known chance of being selected. When there are very large population, it is often difficult to identify every member of the population, so the pool of available subject becomes biased. In random sampling, there are some methods to select samples. Lottery method. With the lottery method, each member of the population is assigned a number, after which numbers are selected at random. For this random sampling, the example for the lottery method is, suppose we want to select a random sample of 200 students from a school. Here we can assign a number to every student in the school database from 1 to 500 and use a random number generator or lottery method to select a sample of 200 numbers. So this is about the random sampling. Next, systematic sampling. Systematic sampling is often used instead of random sampling. It is also called an nth name selection technique. After the required sample size has been calculated, every nth record is selected from a list of population members. As long as the list does not contain any hidden order, this sampling method is as good as the random sampling method. In this method, the population is first divided into a list of sequences and then every nth member is selected from the sample. For example, if every 10th person is selected from a list of 100 people, the sample would include 10 people. So this is all about the systematic sampling. Next, stratified random sampling. Stratified sampling is commonly used probability method that is superior to random sampling because it reduces sampling error. A stratum is a subset of the population that shares at least one common characteristic such as male and female. Identify relevant stratums and their actual representation in the population. Random sampling is then used to select a sufficient number of subjects from each stratum. Stratified sampling is often used when one or more of the stratum in the population have a low incidence relative to the other stratum. In this method, the population is divided into subgroups or strata based on certain characteristics and then a random sample is taken from each stratum. This is often used to ensure that the sample is representative of population as a whole. To give a quick example here, in a research, the target market is split into two strata based on gender, that is male and female. So in gender, there are two strata, male and female. There are 2000 males and 6000 females in the population. Then a sample of 500 male and 1500 females will be selected from each strata by using simple random sampling or any other probability methods can be used. So samples selected from this method are more representative because we dividing the whole population into different groups, then we using the sampling methods, simple random sampling methods to select the sample from each group. The next, cluster sampling. Cluster sample, a probability sample in which each sampling unit is a collection of elements. Effective under the following condition, a good sampling frame is not available or costly, while a frame listing cluster is easily obtained. The cost of obtaining observation increases as the distance separating the element increases. In cluster sampling, the researchers divide a population into smaller groups known as cluster. They then randomly select among these clusters to form a sample. Examples of clusters: city blocks, housing units, hospital, automobiles. Next, non-probability sampling. So now we can discuss about non-probability sampling methods: convenience sampling, judgment sampling, quota sampling, snowball sampling. Convenience sampling. Convenience sampling is used in exploratory research where the researcher is interested in getting an inexpensive approximation. The sample is selected because they are convenient. It is a non-probability method often used during preliminary researchers' efforts to get an estimate without incurring the cost or time required to select a random sample. Convenience sampling is primarily determined by convenience to the researcher. Convenience sample are sometimes called accidental samples because participants can be selected from the sample simply because they happen to be nearby when the researcher is conducting the data collection. For example, you are investigating the association between daily weather and shopping pattern. To collect insight into people's shopping pattern, you decide to stand outside a major shopping mall in your area for a week, stopping people as they exit and asking them if they are willing to answer a few questions about their purchases. So it is purely based on your convenience, that is the investigator's convenience, and the researcher did not choose the sample that outlines the entire population. This is one of the disadvantages of this method. Judgment sampling. Next, judgment sampling. Judgment sampling is a common non-probability method. The sample is selected based upon judgment. An extension of, so this method is an extension of convenience sampling. When using this method, the researchers must be confident that the chosen sample is truly representative of the entire population. In this method, the participants are selected based on specific criteria such as expertise or knowledge on a particular topic. For example, studying the buying pattern of high-end luxury car owned by selecting a sample of individuals who are most likely to purchase a luxury car. So this is one of the example of judgment sampling. Next, quota sampling. Quota sampling is a non-probability equivalent of stratified sampling. First, identify the stratum and their proportions as they are represented in the population. Then convenience or judgment sampling, it is used to select the required number of subjects from each stratum. In quota sampling, you select a predetermined number of proportions of units called a quota. Your quota should comprise subgroups with specific characteristic, example, individual, cases or organization, and should be selected in a non-random manner. Example of such characteristics include like gender, age, residency, educational level, income, etc. The final one, snowball sampling. Snowball sampling is a special non-probability method used when the desired sample characteristic is rare. It may be extremely difficult or cost prohibitive to locate respondents in these situations. This technique relies on referrals from initial subjects to generate additional subjects. It lowers search cost. However, it introduces bias because the technique itself reduces the likelihood that the sample will represent a good cross-section from the population. In this method, participants are recruited through referral from other participants. This method is often used when the population is hard to reach but may not be representative of the population. So this picture explains clearly about the snowball sampling. You can see the researcher recruit initial subject. Then the initial subjects will again recruit the additional subject. Then these additional subject again will recruit the another few additional subjects. So this is how the snowball sampling is done. So this picture clearly explains about the snowball sampling. That's all about the sampling methods. Hope you have understood something about the sorry sir, இது மட்டும் கொஞ்சம் எடிட் பண்ணிக்கோங்க சார். இல்ல சார், இது மட்டும் நான் சொல்லிட்டு thank you சொல்லி முடிச்சிடுறேன். Okay. Okay, that's all about the sampling method. So hope you have understood a few concepts and few methods about the sampling methods. We'll meet you again with another topic on statistics. Thank you.